A question for you on this week's Women's Football Chat. Which is going to end first, the season or the red ink in the pen for the whiteboard? Because it's going to be tight. Yes, welcome along to this week's Women's Football Chat. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every Thursday at 6 p.m. bringing you the show dedicated to the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. Plenty to talk about this week. We've got another round of midweek fixtures coming up as well, so even more going on over the next 7 days. But we're going to start with a little piece of news, and you will have seen over social media over the last few days that the Manager of the Month awards are back for the FAWNL. Now, of course, sod's law is that the managers, it was announced, and then the managers that were up for the award this month, you can start voting for them online. And then, of course, between last week's show, where we didn't know anything about it, and this week's show, the voting's already finished. So can't tell you to go and vote for your manager you think should be Tier 3 and Tier 4 Manager of the Month, because the voting's already shut and we await to see who will be the Manager of the Month for January. But great that the league have been able to bring Manager of the Month back. Presumably it will, of course, then continue throughout the remainder of this season. We'll see if we get Manager of the Season as well. Last year it was just all the league winners that got that. But so that's Manager of the Month back. Great. I think that they've introduced the fan voting for it, and just get the fans a little bit more involved. So that's back. We're going to start then, as we always do, with looking at the results from the past 7 days. However, we're not going to start with the Northern Premier Division. What we're going to do is start with the Women's FA Cup. This is it for my coverage of the FA Cup this season, because no FAWNL sides remain in the competition after last weekend. Both Wolves and Forest losing their home ties to their respective WSL opponents. Wolves, first of all, 4-1 defeat to Brighton and Hove Albion. Beth Merrick from the penalty spot with the goal for Wolves, who really did take Brighton all the way. Although Brighton took the lead in the first half, as I said, there was that equaliser then on 67 minutes for Merrick. It wasn't then until the 88th minute that Brighton went back in front. 88, 90 plus 2 and 90 plus 6. A hat-trick for Emma Kullberg after coming on in the 63rd minute. She then gets an 8-minute hat-trick for a 4-1 scoreline for Brighton, which almost flatters them somewhat. As Wolves' strong performance in front of, I think it was about 1,200 fans at New Bucks Head. So great performance from Wolves. Unfortunately, that's the end of their FA Cup. And it's also the end of the FA Cup for Forest, who lost by 7-1 to Everton. Everton had a 2-0 lead at half-time before Charlotte Greengrass pulls one back for Forest early in the second half. But then Everton kind of just turned on the class, really. They went 3-1 in front 5 minutes later. Then an own goal from Emily Batty 15 minutes from time. That was an unlucky one, really. The shot came back off the post, hit Batty on the back and went in. And then 84, 88 and 90 plus 4 goals for Everton means they finish 7-1 in front of Forest. So that is it for the Women's FA Cup coverage on this channel. It's interesting, really. I've been through and looked at the prize money for all of the clubs in there, and it's interesting to see the change in how some clubs have only picked up £1,000 from the FA Cup this year. Obviously, the further you got, once you got to round 3, that prize money really jumped up. You'll recall from a few weeks ago, back when it was announced. Actually, it was probably announced way back in November time now, more than a few weeks. That the prize money was being increased from the 3rd round. So you've got some teams that lost in the final qualifying round from Tier 4, and they only picked up £1,000. You've got Forest and Wolves there who lost in the 5th round, who have picked up £123,000 from this year's FA Cup. But some leagues, they've had a team that have gone really quite far. And it's a big difference. I mean, take the Northern Premier Division. We've got Forest and Wolves that have that big money in, but then there are 4 teams in there that only picked up £1,500 because they lost in the first round. And then you look at the likes, take Division 1 Southwest, Moneyfield, £66,000. Some other teams only £1,000. And Moneyfields, that's a huge amount of money for them, and should hopefully help them out in the rest of this season and next season as well. But yes, that's the Women's FA Cup then. So that coverage is done for this week. Not doing any more on the quarterfinals of the Women's FA Cup and further on, because other mainstream media outlets are now picking it up. Now it is that late in the competition. What we're going to do then is go back to the league competitions. We're going to start in the Northern Premier Division. Big win for Newcastle in their top of the table clash after losing to Forest a couple of weeks ago. It's a 3-0 victory for Newcastle against Burnley. Casey Elson in the 65th minute, Paige Gale in the 70th, and Jasmine McQuaid in the 85th. We'll see. That's really significant for the top of the table. Derby County 3, Huddersfield Town 1. Goals in this one. It was 1-1 for a time here. Amy Sims had put Derby in front in the first half, 32 minutes in. Cara Fields equalised for Huddersfield, but then 2 goals in 4 minutes. One for Eleanor Ashton and one for Charlotte Steggles gave Derby a 2-goal lead that Huddersfield just weren't able to pull back. Halifax 2, West Bromwich Albion 1. Brittany Sanderson and Lucy Sowerby with the goals for Halifax. Fran Orthodoxou with the goal for West Brom 8 minutes from time. Looked as though it was going to be a draw before Sowerby in the 90th minute put Halifax back in front. Liverpool Feds beating Far by 2-1, perhaps a closer game than some may have anticipated. Chantel Thompson 10 minutes in, Alicia Collins just before half time, 5th minute of added time at the end of the first half, and Sasha Rowe from the penalty spot for Fylde getting 1 goal back, but another defeat for the Northern Premier Division's bottom side. And Stoke City 4, Stourbridge 1. Stoke City very early on here, Saffron Jordan 2 minutes in gave them the lead. Zoe Clark equalising for Stourbridge on 29, but that lasted for just 4 minutes. Arabella Suttie in the 33rd minute, Saffron Jordan in the 40th, and Alice Higginbottom in the 50th minute. 4-1 the win for Stoke City. What that means for the Northern Premier Division table is not a lot of change at the top, but lots of change in mid-table. Newcastle still out in front. They now have a 7-point gap over Forest. Forest have 1 game in hand. They've got an 11-point gap over Burnley, who have 2 games in hand. But that defeat for Burnley in one of their games in hand over Forest means that Burnley now only have 1 game in hand and they're 4 points behind Forest. So Forest has cemented themselves into second for the moment. Burnley now down in third, but Newcastle have negotiated this tricky period where they were playing teams towards the top of the table, and they've still come out in front. So you look at the games that Newcastle have got left now. They do still have 8 games left to play, still plenty of time. But they've got the likes of West Brom, Halifax, Huddersfield, Stourbridge, Stoke, teams towards the bottom, in the bottom half of the table, still to play. And you feel then that even if they slip up against, they've got Feds, Derby and Wolves in there. If they slip up once, maybe twice in there, then the points advantage they've got at the minute might well be enough, given the other games they've got and the better goal difference that they've got, to get themselves over the line and into the Championship next season, which is what we all expected at the start of the season, given that they were the fully professional side. Forest then in second with this hybrid system that they've got going, in second place. You expected them to be up near the top as well. So it does seem as though it's going to be in a situation, we'll look at the Southern Premier in a minute, that you have to put this investment in and almost go full time to get yourselves out of Tier 3 into the Championship and then try and cement yourselves there. And I think that's going to be the way that Tier 3 starts looking, unless the top two tiers get expanded, and then these professional sides can move up. And the risk, I suppose, was thinking about this the other day, the risk possibly is that if you've got 3 or 4 teams per division in Tier 3 that go full time to try and get into the Championship, and only one of them can do it each time, and you've also got teams coming down from the Championship that want to get back in there, how long do the teams in Tier 3 have the investment and not get into the Championship before that investment either gets pulled or it starts having an impact in the way that it's not sustainable without the additional revenue of the top tiers coming in. So it'll be interesting to see over the next few years how many teams decide to go for this full-time or hybrid route to try and get up, but possibly a little bit of a concern in years to come if there isn't some sort of maybe expansion of the top leagues, if more teams are pumping the money in to try and get there. Rest of the league table then, so Derby County with their victory are up to 5th. Wolves didn't play, but they dropped down to 6th. They've got a game in hand over Derby now and 2 games in hand over Liverpool Feds in 4th. So Wolves as 6th place doesn't really at the moment outline exactly where they are. Stoke City and Halifax also up some places. Stourbridge and West Brom, they drop down. Huddersfield and Fylde losing again. Fylde now 10 points away from safety and with just 8 games to go, so they need realistically 4 wins from their remaining 8 games. There are important games for them in there. They have 2 against Stoke. They've got Halifax, Huddersfield and West Brom, so they have games in there where they can pick up the points. It's just whether they can pick up enough. Burnley away, Wolves at home and Derby away, the other fixtures there for Fylde. So it is going to be difficult for them, still yet to win this season, and all of a sudden they need 4 in the last 8 games to put any sort of pressure on the teams above them. Huddersfield Town, they've still got 10 to play and they're only 7 points back. They've got games in hand if they can win them, but again they've got these games. They've got Halifax and West Brom as their next 2. Then they've got a difficult run of fixtures with Liverpool Feds, Forest, Burnley, Newcastle and Wolves. 5 games in a row for Huddersfield Town. They will be difficult, particularly travelling to Forest, travelling to Burnley, travelling to Newcastle, back to back. It's going to be very difficult for Huddersfield to pick any points up there. And then they finish with Fylde and Stourbridge. So we could well have games at the end of the season that mean a great deal. It could all be done by them because there is such a big gap that those teams have got to make up. Southern Premier Division then, Billericay Town 1, Milton Keynes Dons 1. Milton Keynes Dons took an early lead in this one, just 4 minutes into this game they took the lead, but Billericay Town back in the almost the final minute. Nicola Puddick in the 4th minute putting MK Dons in front, and then Maddie Biggs 89th minute equalising for Billericay Town. Cheltenham Town 2, Ipswich Town 2. Goals in this one then. Had to look this up as Ipswich Town have not got one of their goal scorers on there. There's a little bit of debate about that one. But so Cheltenham Town's goals, Henna Butcher 23rd minute, Bonnie Horwood then equalising in the 45th minute from the penalty spot, and then some late drama. So we have Sophie Peskett scoring a go-ahead goal for Ipswich, and then just 2 minutes later Natasha Harding equalising again for Cheltenham. There was a little bit of Ipswich asking who they thought scored the goal, but Sophie Pescott with the goal there. So 2-2, that one finished. Another possibly considered dropped points for Ipswich. Hashtag United 3-0 winners away at London Bees. Malika Gill in the 7th minute, Georgia Griffin 23rd, Macy Nichols 45+3. They got all the scoring done before the break. Oxford 1, Portsmouth 5, big victory for Portsmouth. Their goals coming to Daisy McLaughlin in the 24th minute, Ava Robotham in the 35th and the 45th, so 3-0 at half time. 4-0 just 5 minutes after the break, Georgie Freeland in the 50th. And although Oxford pulled one back with 15 minutes to go through Natasha Stevens, Nicole Barrett made it 5-1 in stoppage time. Convincing victory for Portsmouth. Entertaining game down in Plymouth, but they lose by 4-2 at home to Rugby Borough. Borough getting all their goals in the first half. Angelina Nixon in the 15th minute, Nikki Potts 33rd, Lily Greenslade 36th, and Ebony Wiseman 45th. So 4-0 at half time. Plymouth, though, answer straight back at the start of the second half through Elisara in 48. So a little bit of confidence at the start of the second half. But Imogen Crawford in the 78th minute getting their second. They just couldn't do any more with it and end up losing by 4-2. And a really important victory again for Cardiff City. 2-0 winners over Chatham Town. Full Time has decided that it doesn't want to work as full time anymore. But a 2-0 victory for Cardiff City means that they have really pulled themselves away from any sort of danger in the Southern Premier Division. A great spell for them. Jessie Taylor in the 27th minute, Chloe Lloyd in the 50th minute. What that means then for the Southern Premier Division table, the big movers there are Cardiff City, up 3 places with that victory. Shows how tight the bottom half of that table is. They are now up to 7th and they are 11 points clear of the relegation zone. A huge month so far for Cardiff City. You have a look at the results they've had in February. A win against Billericay Town and a win against Chatham Town. 2 teams down towards the bottom there. And Cardiff have beaten them both to pull themselves, as I said, from just 5 points above the drop to 11 points above the drop, and that could get even better for the Welsh side this weekend, because they have Cheltenham coming up this weekend. Is their last game of February as it stands at the moment. But so Plymouth, Cheltenham, Billericay, they all drop a place, but of course with Chatham and London Bees both losing, there's no ground gained from either of those sides. Still yet to win this season, either of them. So there's no ground gain. So it's still a 9-point gap between Chatham and Billericay Town. It's a 12-point gap between London Bees and Billericay Town. And with the inferior goal difference, it's more like 13 points. So 13 points needed from a possible 21. And I believe I said it last week as well. You look at the fixtures, you need, 4 wins and a draw from the final 7 games. Which means you've got to either travel to Oxford, travel to Portsmouth, or host Rugby and get something from those games, as well as winning the rest of them. Cheltenham Town, Chatham Town and Plymouth Argyle in there as well, though, for London Bees. So they could get some points. It's just whether they can get enough. Towards the top, Rugby Borough with their victory and Oxford United's defeat means that Rugby jump Oxford into 3rd. They are still, though, 9 points behind Portsmouth. Portsmouth with still a game in hand over Hashtag United. They could get that back up to 6 points. But time starting to run out for Hashtag United to mount, they've been mounting a challenge all the time, but they really need Portsmouth to slip up. Hashtag United with Ipswich and Oxford to come as their next 2 league games before things get decidedly easier for Hashtag. Portsmouth have the more difficult run-in of the 2. They've got Ipswich and Rugby and they've got Ipswich and Rugby both at home. But then they also have the teams towards the bottom. So actually it's relatively similar, the the run-ins for both of these sides. Portsmouth in the driving seat at the moment. So that's going to cover Tier 3. Let's now move down to Tier 4. So we'll start in Division 1 Midlands. This will be a little bit faster going through here because there were a few postponements over the course of the weekend. The weather claiming some of the pitches. So Boldmere St Michael's 2, Lincoln City 0. Goals to Abby Bevan in the 8th minute and Gabriella Meyer in the 27th minute. Leaford Athletic Notts, Peterborough United Leek and Sheffield Northampton all falling foul of the weather, but game towards the top. Sporting Cowser 1, Loughborough Lightning 3. Loughborough getting the better of Sporting away from home as well. Doris Greenwood 24th minute. LMA Coots in the 45th +4 and Jessica Collier in the 90th +3. Making it 3 for Loughborough. Leonie Joyce with the only goal for Sporting Cowser in the 81st minute. That's hurt Sporting's title challenge a little bit. Not greatly, but just ever so slightly. And finally, Sutton Coldfield Town 2, Solihull Moors 0. 2 goals in 3 minutes. Lauren DeCasto 34, Lois Jeffries 36, giving Sutton Coldfield Town a good win. Looking at the table then, they are the only movers. They go up to 6th over Solihull Moors. So they are now, certainly in no danger of the bottom 2, you wouldn't have thought. But you can see here when you compare the games played in Division 1 Midlands to the games played particularly in the Tier 3 leagues, that it is a couple of games less generally, because they have suffered a little bit more from the weather. It means the midweeks are going to start ramping up in Division 1 Midlands. But Loughborough Lightning then at the top of the table. Their victory, as well as obviously Boldmere St Michael's, means that they are now 6 points both clear of Peterborough United, but Peterborough have a game in hand. They are now 8 points clear of Sporting Cowser because Sporting lost to Loughborough Lightning, but Sporting still have 2 games in hand, so they are still only within 1 slip up of Loughborough Lightning and Boldmere St Michael's to getting right back into that title race. And of course, at the moment on full time, only 6 more games have been put in for Loughborough. They still have 2 more to schedule, and that is a similar situation with Boldmere. They have 7 in. There is still another 1 to schedule, and if memory serves me right, that is between the top 2, because they were supposed to play a few weeks ago and it ended up not happening. The Sutton Coldfield Town against Solihull Moors, the only movers in Division 1 Midlands. All still remains the same down towards the bottom, those games falling foul of the weather. So still very much Notts County peering over their shoulder and Sheffield hoping that they can take advantage of that game in hand. Division 1 North then, again, games falling foul of the weather. Doncaster Rovers Bells 3, Norton and Stockton Ancients 0. Relatively late goals here for Doncaster Rovers Bells as well, all coming after the hour mark. Jessica Tugby Andrew on the hour mark getting the first, and then 2 for Jasmine Saxton in the 80th and the 90 +6. So a 3-0 victory for Doncaster Rovers Bells. Durham Sestra really having a strong second half of the season. FC United of Manchester the victims this time, despite FC United of Manchester taking the lead 10 minutes in through Emily Walton. But then Victoria Newfiend in the 35th minute, Abby Holmes in the 48th, and then 2 in stoppage time. Daisy Clark 90 +2, Rebecca Bell 90 +5. Means it looks perhaps more comfortable than it was for Durham. Hull, Stockport, Leeds, Chorley both called off because of the weather, and a 6-goal thriller between Middlesbrough and Barnsley, 2 teams towards the top of the table here. Barnsley had gone 3-0 in front in this game. Amy Lee Barringham-Beck in the 12th minute, an own goal in the 32nd, and Emily Pierpont in the 43rd minute had put Barnsley 3-0 up away from home, but Middlesbrough pulled their way back into it. Nicole Havery in the 45th minute before half-time And then Jessica Met in the 52nd minute and Eve Marshall in the 81st minute. So a draw between those two sides. And York City against Chester Street Town, important game towards the bottom, also falling foul of the weather. What that means then for the table in Division 1 North, Middlesbrough remain at the top. Barnsley with their point go above Hull, but they have played one game more now. And Barnsley, of course, still with 2 games in hand over Middlesbrough, so they can still climb above Middlesbrough if they were to win both of those. But likewise, Hull have 3 over Middlesbrough, 2 over Barnsley, and they can climb above both of them and back into the top spot if they were to win all their games in hand. Durham Sestra up to 4th, so they stay where they were, but they're now even closer to those teams at the top. They can get within 1 point of Middlesbrough as well if they win their game in hand. So really are starting to see from Durham, they missed out last season to Newcastle just, and after a difficult start to the season, they have now really found their form and are starting to climb that table. No other movements in Division 1 North, so it's all still as you were down towards the bottom, because FC United and Manchester lose, York and Chester Street Town don't play, and Norton Stockton Ancients lose as well. So the bottom 4 all still exactly the same. The gaps are the same, the goal differences are ever so slightly different, but FC United and Manchester's is so far away from everybody else's that almost doesn't matter at this point. Division 1 South East then, only one game falls foul of the weather, Haywards Heath Town against Norwich. So AFC Sudbury 2, London Seaward 4. Now, being on the Twitters for these, and you kind of get a choice with Sudbury and Seaward. I can give you the scorers, or I can give you the times of the goals, but I don't know who scored in what order. So, scorers for London Seaward, Megan Burrows, Livia Caparelli, Ray Laudat and Catherine Long. Goals for AFC Sudbury, Chloe Brame in the 68th minute and Victoria Leah in the 72nd minute. But London Seaward with the 3 points. Cambridge United, big winners away at Actonians. Actonians went down to 10 minutes into the second half, which didn't help. Even though they went in at half-time, a goal to the good. Amber Dredge in the 44th minute with the goal for Actonians. But then Isabella Simmons in the 56th minute. So right after Bremerton gets sent off. She then got a second in the 90 plus third minute, by the way. Zoe Wood, 59th minute from the penalty spot and 70th minute. And Abby Smith in the 90th minute. Cambridge City 2, Ashford Town 3. Goals in this one, again no times on these. Jade Barrett and Rebecca Stevenson for Cambridge City, and for Ashford Town, Ashley Cheatley, Alyssa Down and Anya Kinane. So a 3-2 victory for Ashford. Chesham 4-0 losers at home to AFC Wimbledon. No real surprise there. Ashley Hinks 27th minute, Ashley Goddard 36th, Hannah McKenzie 56th and Eleanor Dory 88th minute. Relatively comfortable for Wimbledon, as you might expect against a team down towards the bottom. And finally, in Division 1 South East, Worthing 1, Queen's Park Rangers 1. Joanna Blodgett with the goal for Queen's Park Rangers, and goal for Shannon Albury in the 62nd minute. So that goal for Queen's Park Rangers in the 58th minute actually only put them in front for 4 minutes. So what that does for the South East table, the only movement is Cambridge United against Actonians. Cambridge United with the victory means that they jump above them, but other than that, it's pretty much all the same. So AFC Wimbledon are now 6 points clear at the top after their win over Chesham, but Norwich now have 2 games in hand because they didn't play. Worthing have dropped off ever so slightly after their draw with Queen's Park Rangers in 4th. They're 7 points back now, so tall order for them with just 7 games to go, because you're requiring now AFC Wimbledon to drop points in 3 of their last 7 games. Now, part of that is going to be in Worthing's control because they do play each other later on in the season. But And Wimbledon, they do have to face Norwich at home and then Worthing away. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that if a team lower down can pick up a draw against Wimbledon, and Worthing and Norwich can both beat them, that they do end up in a situation where Worthing can pull themselves close to Wimbledon, although they do have an inferior goal difference by a significant margin. The issue then for Worthing is Norwich, and they've got a similar situation where Norwich have got obviously Worthing and Wimbledon still to play, but then Norwich have got teams right down towards the bottom, and you're needing them to realistically lose against one of those teams because of the goal difference. So tall order for Worthing, perhaps turning into a bit of a two-horse race in terms of what you would expect to happen on paper with the remainder of the games. But of course football isn't played on paper. Down towards the bottom then, Chesham United, despite losing, are still 6 points clear. And again, as we mentioned before, Haywards Heath Town's game against Norwich was postponed. Cambridge City, another game played for them, and another defeat after losing to Ashford. You look at the games that they've got still coming up. They've got 6 scheduled. They've got another one to play that's not been put in yet, but Wimbledon and Worthing are games that they probably won't be targeting. What they'll be looking at is Haywards Heath Town, Sudbury, Seawood as well, and probably Cambridge United, a bit of obviously the local derby. But Cambridge City perhaps not looking at Chesham and Seawood. Cambridge City targeting that AFC Sudbury game, saying, well, if we can win that game, that will put us 3 points as it stands at the moment, obviously, out of the relegation zone. It's starting to feel, I think I said it a couple of weeks ago, as if it's 2 from 3 at the bottom of Division 1 South East, rather than 2 from 4. Chesham pulling themselves away. London Seawood are 13 points clear of Cambridge City, and with a much better goal difference. So realistically, with 7 games to go, you're saying Cambridge City, if they're going to catch London Seawood, need to win 5 of their last 7. And that means they have to win every game other than the ones against Wimbledon and Worthing. Haywards Heath Town are already 15 points behind London Seawood, and with an inferior goal difference, which means you're looking at 6 out of the final 8. And with Norwich and Wimbledon and Worthing in there, I don't think Haywards Heath Town can catch London Seawood, and I think it's very unlikely for Cambridge City as well. So it is really just those teams right down towards the bottom. Division 1 South West then, 4 games to talk about here. Bournemouth against Torquay was off at Torquay's request, is what Bournemouth put out on their social media. Abingdon United 3, Southampton Women's 0. Goals in this one for Abingdon United to Nell Boxall, Erin Hartigan and Lauren May. Again, couldn't find any times for that game. Maidenhead United 2, Bridgewater United 1. Goals then all coming late on again. Simone O'Brien in the 62nd minute, 1-0 to Maidenhead. Then in the 74th minute, Bridgewater through Ellie Bell equalised. So that made it 1-1, but that only lasted for 5 minutes before Mason Nikia Walters in the 79th minute put Maidenhead back in front. 5-0 win for Keynsham Town away at Chelsea. Again, not a real surprise here. Vicky Vipond in the 9th and the 75th minute. Selin Gartson in the 38th minute. And Brooke Stirrup in the 52nd minute. Twice, according to full time. Now, that does... Obviously, scoring twice in a minute is possible. It does then make the goals add up properly. 2-5. Can't see anywhere in the detail where it says anything about an own goal or a penalty that's not being put on there. But also, of course, Keynsham don't tweet and Chelsea didn't tweet like game updates. So I'm going to have to go with 2 goals in 52nd in the 52nd minute. It seems to work. Obviously, the thing that makes me doubt that is we have seen time and time again on full time where the same minute has been put twice and it's actually only one goal. But we'll go with it, 5-0 for Keynsham Town. And then the last game up at the top there, because it was a later kickoff, Moneyfields 1, Exeter City 4. So this is what I'm talking about here straight away. If you go on full time, it says Molly Taylor in the 39th, the 52nd and the 52nd. But because of Sophie Gillis's goal in the 43rd and Connie Pengelly's goal in the 90th, if you say, okay, it was a Molly Taylor hat-trick, that makes 5 goals, not 4 goals for Exeter. So something is off somewhere. So in this instance, you go, okay, 39 and 52, and then the other 2 goals as well. So it's one of those glitches, bugs, annoying things about full-time. One of the other annoying things about full-time is that it will be offline for 3 days in early March to allow for essential security updates, which means I'm not going to be able to access it in the run-up to the show in the 1st of March. So I might have to record that on a Monday, and then none of the information will be on there yet anyway. So that'll be an interesting one. Moneyfields' goal, by the way, 64th minute. Carolina Heyer-Taylor with the goal for Moneyfields, as I said, in the 64th minute. What it does for the Southwest table, the only change, Abingdon above Moneyfields. Abingdon now into 4th. They're having a great first season in Division 1 Southwest. Obviously, with the teams at the top, completely ignore any sort of title challenge. They're 15 points behind Exeter. So Exeter 9 points now ahead of Bournemouth, but Bournemouth have got the 3 games in hand. Bournemouth also have, and you feel they're going to need it, a game against Chelsea as their penultimate game of the season. If you feel they're going to need that in order to pull their goal difference, which is currently 21 behind Exeter's, up kind of level to make it what is scheduled at the moment to be an incredible final day. And the reason I say that is because on full time and scheduled at the moment, the 5th of May, the final day of the season, Exeter City hosting Bournemouth. And of course, if that, as it stands at the moment, may well end up being a title decider, which would be great for the league because they just take the trophy to one place and then you're guaranteed to know the winner's going to be there. So we'll await that in May. But Abingdon, above Moneyfield. So Abingdon up to 4th, Moneyfield's down to 5th. Down towards the bottom, Chelsea lose, Southampton women lose, Torquay United don't play. Maidenhead, though, get that victory. So they are now 8 points clear of Southampton Women's, who have only reached the halfway point of their season now with that game this weekend. So they've still got plenty of games to play. And of course, only one win, and they've got 2 games in hand, will take them back above Torquay. So, not all lost for Southampton Women, certainly. But it is starting to look as though, we said it all towards the start of the season where they weren't playing games and maybe their league position isn't quite true of where they actually are. Well, obviously it is now. They are 2 points away from safety, but as I said, they do have those 2 games in hand. Right, let's go now to the fixtures coming up over the next 7 days. As I said, we've got midweek fixtures coming up. So midweek, any fixtures on Tuesday or Wednesday are in this week's show. Any fixtures next Thursday are obviously in next week's show because those fixtures will kick off after this comes out at 6 p.m. next Thursday. So Northern Premier League fixtures then. And it's also County Cup weekend this weekend, so there's not a lot going on. 3 games in the Northern Premier Division this weekend I said in the north. Liverpool Feds against Nottingham Forest, 4th against 2nd. Newcastle United against Derby is 1st against 5th. And Stoke City against Fylde is 7th against 10th. So important games towards the top. Newcastle hosting Derby. Forest travelling to Liverpool Feds. Forest have to win that game. That's a given. They have to win it if they're going to stand any chance of Newcastle dropping the points that Forest need to catch them up. And then Newcastle hosting Derby. Again, you kind of have to put them as favourites for that. They are, nearly 20 points clear of Derby in the table. Stoke City mid-table, not really a lot to play for. FAWNL, though, obviously desperate to start picking up some points to try and close that gap to West Brom in 10th. Then on Wednesday, FAWNL travel to Burnley. Tough fixture there. Burnley in 3rd. And Stourbridge host Wolves. That's 9th against 6th. Should be a great game there down at the War Memorial Athletic Ground. In the Southern Premier Division, again, 3 games on Sunday, and then we go into midweek. Cardiff City against Cheltenham Town. Another big game towards the bottom half of the table. Cardiff City could pretty much put their safety beyond all doubt with a victory, although you feel even Cheltenham Town could probably do that with a victory. Ipswich Town against MK Dons, 5th against 6th. Ipswich Town, of course, have fallen away a bit in this season. They're 16 points away from the top of the table. And Portsmouth against Chatham Town, 1st against 11th. You would think that Portsmouth should stroll to victory against Chatham Town. This is Portsmouth's game in hand against #United, so they'll really want to go back to being 6 points clear, and with such a better goal difference, currently 33 better than #United. That 6 points will almost be 7 points with just 7 games to go. Then in midweek, Billericay Town against Chatham Town. Huge game down towards the bottom at New Lodge on Wednesday. Ipswich take on #United. So no sooner did Portsmouth pull level on games played with #United. Then play in the week and go one more than Portsmouth again. Milton Keynes Dons against London Bees, 6th against 12th. And Oxford United take on Rugby Borough, 4th against 3rd. So some really important games towards the top and the bottom then. So Billericay Town against Chatham Town, huge relegation 6-pointer. If Chatham were to win that, they reduce it to a 6-point gap. A 6-point gap, and then they've got a game in hand. So you then would go to, possibly a 3-point gap if they were to win that game in hand. If Billericay are to win the game, they go to 17 points. That will pretty much do it for them. But then the gap gets even bigger because Cheltenham Town are a point in front. And obviously if Cheltenham beat Cardiff, then it could be Plymouth who are the ones in 10th. And then that's an even bigger gap. That's then an 11-point gap to Chatham Town and a 14-point gap to London Bees. Now, if it goes to a 14-point gap to London Bees and they will only have 6 games to go come the show next week, then they'd have to win 5 out of 6. And then, you're pretty much just waiting, to be honest, to put relegated next to London Bees' name. And then Oxford against Rugby Borough, both of them it is still possible for them, but they are a long way back. 9 points and 11 points behind Portsmouth at the top of the table. So yes, there's 8 games to go. Yes, there's chances there to close that gap, but a very important one for both of those sides if they want to keep the pressure on towards the top. Division 1 Midlands, just 4 games then. Sheffield against Sporting Cowser and Solihull Moors against Leek Town at the weekend. So Sheffield down in 11th, Sporting Cowser up in 4th, Solihull Moors in 7th, Leek Town down in 9th. So again, this is Sheffield's game in hand on Notts County. If they can get anything from this game, they will put themselves in 10th. Notts will drop down into the relegation zone. And 2 games on Tuesday. Bournemouth St Michael's in 2nd, Sporting Cowser in 4th, Sutton Coldfield Town in 6th, and Leafield Athletic in 12th, as these teams who are a bit behind, kind of 14-15 games, start to make these up. Division 1 North, just 1 game at the weekend and then a lot going on in midweek. The 1 game at the weekend, Hull City in 3rd against Chorley in 8th. 2 teams that have only played 12. So that will bring Hull level with Barnsley, and they may well go above them then. And then 10 teams in action on Tuesday or Wednesday. Barnsley in 2nd, Stockport County in 6th, Chester Street Town in 11th, Norton and Stockton Ancients in 9th. Big game there A decent swing could mean that Chester Street Town leapfrog Norton and Stockton Ancients. Doncaster Rovers Bells in 7th, Hull City in 3rd, Durham Sestra in 4th against Middlesbrough in 1st, big game there towards the top, and Leeds United against York City is 5th against 10th. So there could well be quite a bit of movement towards the top and the bottom in Division 1 North. Division 1 South East, one game at the weekend and 3 games next Wednesday. Cheshire United against AFC Sudbury this weekend. Really important game down towards the bottom. Sudbury, if they were to win this game, would pull themselves 3 points clear of the relegation zone. If Cheshire United were to win this game, then that, in my view, is definitely Cheshire United safe for another season. And what a 2024 that would be for them, winning games against those teams below them and really pulling themselves away from any sort of danger. Then on Wednesday, Ashford Town against AFC Wimbledon, 5th against 1st. Cambridge United in 6th, then host AFC Sudbury down in 10th. And Queen's Park Rangers in 4th, host London Seaward in 8th. So only the 4 games of and Division 1 South East is a little bit spread out, so there might not be too much movement come next week's show. But 2 games at AFC Sudbury against teams in the bottom half of the table, well, plus Cambridge United in 6th. So it could be a very, very important week for AFC Sudbury. And finally, Division 1 South West. No games on Sunday. Now, 1 game tonight between Southampton Women's and Moneyfields. They are urging people, and I will just check it now, to check before they travel, because the weather down there apparently is not great at the moment, so there could be that this game does not go ahead, but as it stands at the moment, the game is still on tonight between Southampton Women's and Moneyfields. Then on Wednesday, so yeah, that's tonight, and then no games at the weekend in Division 1 South West. On Wednesday, Maidenhead United against Abingdon United is 9th against 4th. Portishead Town in 8th against Bridgewater United in 7th. Mid-table, I mean, a win for either of those sides would certainly put them too far away from the bottom 2. Portishead certainly 9 points at the minute. If they were to go to 12, then they should be okay. And then Moneyfields travel to Chelsea, so Moneyfields in 5th, Chelsea obviously down in 12th, and then Swindon Town against Keynsham Town is 3rd against 6th. Normally that would be a game where Swindon go, let's keep the pressure on the top 2, but Exeter and Bournemouth this season have just been so good. The only drop points they've had is when they drew with each other. It's definitely just a 2-horse race in South East, and I kind of hope that it stays that way, and they both stay in touch with each other, that either of them can win it when they meet on the final day, because that would be a very, very interesting final day. And I'm just going to check, because obviously some of these games move all the time. Was that always planned? Well, I say planned. Was that always the case, that they were playing against each other? Yes, it was. From the very start of the season, Exeter hosting Bournemouth was the game scheduled for the final day of the season, and look how it has turned out. But yes, that will then do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat, your show dedicated to the 3rd and 4th tiers of women's football here in England. We shall see over the next few weeks how the red pen on the whiteboard stacks up towards the end of the season, or if I'll need to get a new one as we head in towards the run-ins. We are still on a full board for another few weeks, as it looks 7 weeks ahead. I think I've got another 4 weeks before then columns start becoming empty as I start to get towards the end of the season. Of course, next week we'll also be previewing the semi-finals of the Cup and Plate competitions. But for now, thank you very much for joining me on this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat, for watching and or listening. I'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m, bringing you all of the results and the fixtures from the FAWNL, as well as any other news that comes to light in the next 7 days. So I hope you have a very good weekend and midweek if you're out supporting your team. But for now, goodbye.